So welcome back, guys, to another episode of the CineMatch Podcast, the podcast where we take two different movies every episode and pair them off against each other in a series of categories to see which one is ultimately the better movie. Joining me this week, and potentially more often, depending how much I tolerate him today, a man who loves the sound of his own voice more than anyone I've ever met. So he should be very well suited to this. My boss, actually, so I might have to be a little nicer than I usually am. But yeah, joining me is Mr. Nathan Hanna. Nathan, how are you doing? Thanks for joining, by the way.
No worries. I've been looking forward to this all week, I'm not going to lie. I've been practicing my podcast voice while I've been sat on now.
I mean, I've been in meetings with you, so I know just how much you like to waffle on, so I think you'll be well suited to it.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it waffling. Professional improvisation.
If that's what you want to say, that's what I want to say. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on. Obviously, I've not done an episode in a while because I've obviously just started this whole new writing thing. My life's been manic at the moment, just catching up with everything. But yeah, so this should be a good episode. We're covering my favourite film of all time, and I think you said did you say your favourite film as well?
I mean, if we're not going to count Star Wars.
Oh yeah, of course.
Let's get that out of the way. But yeah, if we're not going to count, obviously, The Empire Strikes Back. But yeah, my favourite non-Star Wars film of all time, Ghostbusters.
Yeah, so it's going to be Ghostbusters versus my favourite film of all time, which is just over this shoulder here. But I'm really confused.
You pointed to Breakfast Club. I didn't watch that.
No, Back to the Future. Yeah, I don't know. That's all confusing. But yeah, I actually rewatched both this weekend. I mean, I've rewatched Back to the Future like 4 times already this year. So that one I didn't really need to do, but I was on a hill in the Peak District fearing for my life. So I just thought, why not? If I go watching the best thing I've ever seen. So it was an interesting
a massive thunderstorm on Saturday as well. So you picked, because we both watched it on the same night. We definitely picked the right night to watch it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't even think of like the whole thunderstorm aspect of it, like the fact that it's in the fucking movie. I didn't even think of that.
What you think was your favourite movie, Christ?
Yeah, I was just on a hill in a tent, just thinking this could be the end, so I might as well watch the best film I can.
It's a standard Saturday, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I rewatched Ghostbusters last night. I'll be honest though, I actually only watched Ghostbusters for the first time last year, so I've not got that feeling with it growing up that I imagine you did. When did you first watch that?
Oh God, back in the black and white days, I think.
How about I say back when you were a kid? We are going back.
Yeah, so I would have watched it. I remember watching the cartoon first because I was a kid. And I remember actually seeing Ghostbusters 2 before seeing Ghostbusters 1. My parents always said, Ghostbusters 1's probably a little bit scarier. But yeah, I can't remember, definitely early 90s, like 96, 97, 95 probably. But yeah, but similarly, like not the past couple of years, but I didn't watch Back to the Future until I was in my mid to late 20s. So like I would probably watch Back to the Future at your age, which is very upsetting to say. But so yeah, it's pretty similar kind of ways we watched it. I didn't grow up with Back to the Future at all. I never knew anything about it. It was always one of those films that was like, I can't be able to watch that.
That's a terrible.
Yeah, Ghostbusters is let's be honest, it's perfection.
Yeah,
we'll find out if it's perfection.
Yeah, it depends how you scored it. It is really good though. But yeah, so it's a similar situation where you only really checked out Back to the Future in later years, whereas with Back to the Future, that was one of those films that I feel like was always on like ITV2 on a Sunday afternoon. So whenever my granddad was looking after me, just stick it on and I'd just be sat in front of the TV, not moving, and I was just content with life to it. So it's a film I can't remember seeing for the first time. It's just always been there. Which
when I watched it, I knew all of the references. I knew all like the Family Guy jokes. And I knew all the like the quotes and everything. But like I remember finally watching it and being like, do you know those films where you just go, why the fuck have I not watched this ever before? But yeah, no, it is a great film, but so is Ghostbusters.
They are both very good films. It'll be interesting. So we'll dive straight in. Have you tallied up your score already? Do you know, without telling me now, do you know which one has ultimately come out on top?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. I have. Yeah.
Cool. I was literally doing mine 2 minutes before we jumped on, so I'm not lost all
just for context, anybody who doesn't know me, I am the least sport person. So you had to explain it to me like I'm 5. You had to really like because he said
Drill
it's
it
10,
in.
it's 10 if it's good, it's 10 if it's to them, and 9 if it's not. And I messaged you, didn't I? Say, why not just 1 and 0 then?
Yeah. Well, that defeat the object of it being like
MMA,
a mix.
MMA, isn't it?
Yeah, it's taking inspiration from that and like boxing and stuff. But yeah, at least you've got your score written down. We'll see how terribly you've messed up the scoring by the end.
I will try writing it down as we go with my Sharpie and paper.
We'll jump straight in. There's no better place to start than with the cast in general. So talking about like the characters and how well the actors that played them suited the roles. So with the start, I'll give my score first for this one, and then in the next, and then you can go, and then in the next category we'll rotate, and you can go first. So for the cast, which probably isn't that surprising, but was much tougher than I thought, I did go Back to the Future with a 10-9.
I knew this would happen. We're going to argue from the get-go, you son of a bitch.
But do you know what? This is actually probably the toughest category for me. I really only know this because anyone that knows me knows how much I love, obviously, Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
But I also really, really, really love Bill Murray. And I think especially watching it this second time this weekend, he stands out in that film. Like, it feels like all the great like one-liners come from Bill Murray, and it's just Bill Murray being the best version of him. And like I love him so much. So it was really tough, especially when you look at the cast around him, like Dan Aykroyd and Sigourney Weaver and Harold Ramis and like Ernie Hudson. Like they're all really, really good. And even Annie Potts, who plays the secretary. Have you watched Young Sheldon, by the way?
No, but I know she's a grandma in it. I've seen TikTok clips with video games playing underneath. I'm young and hip. I'm cool.
In like I want to say this in like the politest way possible, but she could be the finest looking 70-year-old woman I've ever seen in my entire life. I swear to God, like she is still unbelievably good looking. It's crazy.
Well, even when she comes back in Afterlife.
Yeah. That's also a really good film, actually.
We'll get there.
Yeah, very true, actually. Yeah. But yeah. After that, I think when you compare it to Back to the Future, though, for me, it's obviously Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly and Christopher Lloyd as the dog. I don't think that film works without them two. I think, obviously, there's a reference.
I do agree on that, yeah.
There's a reference in a film that came out recently that I liked and you loved.
Can we not? We're having a nice chat.
But they mentioned in there, obviously, Eric Stoltz was supposed to be Marty McFly, and they realised quickly he wasn't suited. And have
you seen the footage? Have you ever seen any footage of Eric Stoltz? To you, does it just not work, or is it hard to separate it?
Yeah, it's the thing with Eric Stoltz is he didn't see it as the lighthearted film it was. He thought it was much more serious, and he said like he went in the past and he thought it was more like a horror movie, like history was changing around him. He didn't get the vibe they were going for, and you can see that in just the brief clips of him. Like there's one very famous one where it shows him leaning in front of George in the cafe, and it just looks completely different.
He's got a completely different tone to it. Even it's a very simple. I know we've seen you talk. It's a very simple shot, but it's just completely different. But yeah, no, I get you.
And then I saw obviously your Letterboxd review. You didn't quite like Crispin Glover this time, but I think he's really, really good. And I think not to step on sequels or anything, but I actually think the Back to the Future sequels are missing Crispin Glover. I think the fact he's not in them, he feels like a big hole for me.
I think rewatching it, I've watched it a few times, not as much as you. I don't think anybody's watched it as much as you.
No, I don't think so.
But rewatching it, I hated it. Crispin Glover, I hated it, and it's that like kind of. That was a really bad impression, but it's like really awkward, and he's like really squirmy and whatever, and it really grated on me. But then, like I put in my Letterboxd review, that's what he's supposed to be. So he's kind of doing it right. And I know he had troubles with the sequels and what have you, but I'm only talking about this film. But like, yeah, even like at the end, spoilers if anybody's not seen Back to the Future, but
if you haven't, you shouldn't be listening to this.
Yeah, go away. Come back when you've watched it. Like even if you've like at the end, when he's the more successful version, he's still got that kind of like it's the laugh that he does the like laugh. And it really grates on me. And I want to love it, but it does grate on me. But I suppose that's what he's supposed to. Yes, he achieved the goal he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I think the role. I think it's difficult to imagine anyone else being George McFly, because like I said, in the second one, they obviously don't have Crispin Glover, so they just hang. I don't even remember the name of the actor they use, but they just hang him upside down with the prosthetics on. And even though they do a good job of it, you can tell it's not him, just in the voice and the mannerisms and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think he's great. And there's even like Billy Zane just playing a random Biff's like little lackey.
Yeah.
And Tom Wilson as Biff
from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah. And like, but Tom Wilson as Biff is like, I don't think I've ever seen him in anything else, and he's so good. Like, it's bizarre. So I mean, I haven't even spoke about Leah Thompson, but I don't want to drag on too much about talking about everyone in that film because I probably could. But like the whole cast are just great, which is why I went 10-9 for Back to the Future.
Okay, well, we're gonna fight on the first round, but I think to what you, not to like I say drag on too much, but to kind of build off what you've already said, like Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis, who you missed on your list.
Like I didn't even say him. Yeah, I can't believe I didn't say Rick
Annie Potts, Sigourney Weaver. Like I can never remember the guy's name who plays Walter Peck, but
William Atherton.
That's it. Yeah. And like you're right, Back to the Future doesn't work without Marty and Doc. But to me, you can replace anybody else around him. Like Crispin Glover, my opinions obviously show, but anybody could play that character, and the mum, anybody could play the mum, and everybody else around him. Biff, I think Biff is perfectly cast as well. But I mean, Ghostbusters is such a powerhouse of cast. Like you say, Bill, every syllable that comes out of Bill Murray's mouth is comedic gold. Even like Dan Aykroyd's got that. He's got that childlike wonder about him with everything that he does in the Ghostbusters. And obviously he's got a massive kind of passion for Ghostbusters because that was his pet project for ages, and he's got the love for the paranormal. And Harold Ramis just playing Egon perfectly. To when we get to the legacy question, to tears later on down the line, and and then like Rick Moranis doing another amazing, like awkward, nerdy, like the next door neighbor, and Sigourney Weaver being the absolute hottest woman of the 80s in that movie, like as well as being genuinely funny and like being that like I don't want you, and to slowly turning very quickly to, as 80s movies did, move very very quickly. But so I went 10-9. I think I got that right. 10-9 to Ghostbusters. Back to the Future, it was hard though, because you're right, it doesn't work. But I don't think Ghostbusters works either without any of that cast. It's just like the perfect melting pot of people. And I'm going to stump you a little bit because you say Back to the Future doesn't work without Christopher Lloyd and
Michael
J. Fox. Yeah, I'm blanking. But what's your favourite stage musical of the recent years?
No, the musicals.
Yeah, but you love the musical, but that hasn't got them in it, and so
in a similar sense, Ghostbusters Afterlife has them for like 4 minutes, and that still works.
Yeah, because it can't work without them.
It did for the most part. Them showing up didn't save that film, but I do agree that
it saved me.
The Ghostbusters cast is phenomenal.
But
and William Atherton was obviously in Die Hard as well. I don't think there's many people that play a better ass. Like, he just plays a dickhead so well.
Yeah. But yeah, that's why I went good, because it's Back to the Future rests on two people. Like Biff is hanging on the edge, but you could probably replace him in most of that cast. Like Molly Ringwald or something in the 80s probably could have done the mum like quite good justice. Whereas I think
Molly Ringwald would have been good actually.
See, change your score now, Cal.
No way.
I think if you take any of the ingredients out of Ghostbusters, they all perfectly balance. Like Ernie Hudson playing just the blue collar worker who's like it's just a job, like you.
Hey, I'm a grafter. I'm willing to.
Yeah, you graft. But yeah, and that's why I went 10-9 for Ghostbusters.
Cool. Well, moving on.
I will say before we carry on, though, I went in watching Back to the Future. Like, I knew it was going to be a tough one when we both agreed on it, and I went into watching Back to the Future on Saturday, and I thought, this is going to be. Do you know what? This is going to be a lot fucking harder than I thought. Like, especially, I was just looking at the cast question. I was like, it's going to be so fucking hard. And I put Ghostbusters, and I went, no, it's not.
I was the opposite. I thought it was going to be easy, and then it was a bit harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll move on now to
sorry.
The best opening out of the two films. So like the opening scenes, like so obviously in Back to the Future, you've got Marty showing up at Doc's house. trying the guitar. You see all the Doc's like contraptions just working around the place. And then just find like when Doc rings him and he finds out he's late for school, and then it kicks into the power of love, and we see him on the skateboard. And then in comparison, you've obviously got Ghostbusters in the library with the librarian, and she comes across the ghost, and it shows her like running out. And as she runs out, like, is it a freeze frame on her face as it kicks into
the wind's blowing on her face, and then the iconic Ghostbusters drums start coming in.
Yeah, so as far as movie openings go, they are both pretty damn good. But I'll let you go first on how you scored them.
Yeah, well, I love both openings, like you said. They both, I think, in terms of openings, they both 100% encapsulate kind of what the movie and the tone of the movie is about. Like the opening to Back to the Future, you just know who Marty McFly is by the end of it. Like turning on all the clock. Well, no, not the clock. Sorry, he's plugging in the amp. He fucking blows the amp. You kind of get to know Doc over the phone as well, and you get to, it's perfectly crafted because you get to know Doc just without seeing him. You're seeing all the scientists on the wall. You're seeing Einstein's food on the floor, the clocks, the amazing little foreshadowing of the clock with him hanging off the edge of it. And then when he's late for school, the classic. You telling me it's 8:25 or whatever it is, and it's running out, grabbing onto the back of cars to skateboard. Just really shows you what kind of character Marty is. I completely forgot about the scene when he's driving past the aerobics class, and he's like waves, and every single woman waves at him. Like
that's right. That's the source Marty McFly.
I wouldn't be going to school if I had that kind of pull over aerobics class. Christ. But yeah, over Back to the Future, The Power of Love as well. Like such a not just a great movie song, but a great 80s song as well. But then like Ghostbusters, man, what can I say? Like it tells you everything you need to know about the movie. It's got that. It opens up with a kind of horror, and you think it's going to be like a little bit more of a horror, and then the music kicks in, it uplifts the tone, and then from there up to when they kind of like the getter kind of moment, that like when the library bit ends, it's just you get the humor, you get to know all the characters immediately. You know the type of people. You've also got that bit with the Bill Murray testing the psychics. And he's like the bit that always makes me laugh when he puts the pencil against the head, and when he's trying to get her to fix it. So I went 10-9 to Ghostbusters purely because that one was closed, and that one I argued with myself for a while, but purely because like the opening to Ghostbusters, you're seeing not just the characters, who they are, what they represent, the tone, the humor, like yes, no human can stack books like this and all that kind of stuff. But you also like seeing the special effects as well, like of the ghost, which I'm sure at the time were absolutely phenomenal and still are. Like watching it again, there's only a few scenes where that movie looks fake. But yeah, so I went 10-9 to Ghostbusters. But the opening to Back to the Future is fucking insane. Like it is great just knowing just getting to know Marty McFly just from that very short period of time. And setting up what the town looks like versus what it's going to look like. It's great.
Yeah, this might surprise you, but I actually went 10-9 in favor of Ghostbusters as well.
I'm not shocked.
Because obviously the Back to the Future opening, I think, is one of like a really, really like effective one. Like you said, it shows who Doc is without actually introducing him. Like you hear him on the phone, you see how his place looks. You just get that he's just like this messy inventor. Yeah. And the scene when Marty first tries the guitar and he falls down, he's sitting like when he gets up and he takes the shades off slowly. Yeah. One of the coolest shots around. Like I love it. And like you said, like those little bits where he goes through the town and it foreshadows how things will eventually like change. It lets you see everything without it being too on the nose, I think. Yeah. But the Ghostbusters opening, it's just really, really good. Like
there's no argument to it, is it?
No, like you said, it does almost feel like a bit of a horror at first, like with the fact like it's the cards flying out of the drawer, and then she stops and turns around and sees it, and she's running. And I think the needle drop into that song is one of the best ever. Like I think it's so effective. And then like you said, as soon as you meet the rest of the cast, like Bill Murray, and I think that's so funny when he's doing the electric shock thing, because it literally, I mean, we obviously see it further on, but it automatically tells you the exact sort of human being he is. That guy has always got women on the mind. I feel like that's Bill Murray in almost any film he's in, but
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
always like it's really effective. So yeah, I went 10-9 on that one as well because as much as I love the Back to the Future opening, even the bit where obviously you got the radio on and they say the plutonium's missing, and then when he kicks his skateboard, you see the plutonium under the table. But I think the Ghostbusters one's just a little bit more like intense and exciting, whereas the Back to the Future one's more like this is who he is, and
This is all set up, yeah.
yeah,
Well, but I think
that one.
The thing that the Back to the Future one does really, really well, that I'll never stop praising it for, is that later on, like 30, 40 minutes into the film, being shown stuff in the past, and you only had a glimpse of it, like in that opening. You only had like a second with it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's changed, and it does like really, really well, and like really, really sets up the time travel without having to spend too much time on it, and so that is really, really good. But yeah, you're right. That the opening to Ghostbusters is just pretty iconic.
Yeah, there's no question. Next we'll go to the best story. So obviously the overall plot of the movie, you've got in Back to the Future, obviously it's you think it's complicated, the fact there's time travel involved, but it's essentially just, you can say it in two sentences. Boy travels back in time and accidentally prevents his parents from meeting, has to make them fall in love to ensure he actually survives. Like that's it. That's all it is.
Yeah,
and
it's been taking the piss out of for years for essentially making his mum and dad get together in many different ways. But
and then the Ghostbusters one, obviously, it's a bit more complex. You've obviously got the fact that they form the team and they start taking on all these different jobs hunting ghosts. But then it's not just any like regular ghosts. There's obviously the overlying situation with obviously Zool at first, and then what's the big one called? Is it Gozer or something like that?
Gozer, yeah.
Gozer, that's it, yeah. And like when that eventually comes out and it turns out they've been using Sigourney Weaver, Dana's building as like a site for it ready. Like it's quite intense. And I think because of how simple yet effective Back to the Future story is, I went 10-9 in favor of that, because I think just even the way the story was like created and the idea came from Bob Gale that was like working on the film with Robert Zemeckis, and it was like he saw a picture of his dad in high school and was like, I wonder if we'd have got on, like if we'd have known each other then. That was literally how the story became. And like just that on its own, it's like it's such a simple way to like light the spot that starts the story, and it is a really simple story that could probably be made at any time, and it was just the perfect generation for it to be made. Because even now, if you made that film now and you go back 30 years, what's that, 1993, it doesn't work. Yeah, that makes you feel old. I still wasn't alive, first of all. I want to say that
I was.
But yeah, like it doesn't work now, and I think taking into account when it was made and just how weirdly different the 80s and the 50s were, like
a complete total shift.
Yeah. It feels like there's 60, 70 years between them, not 30. It's bizarre, but yeah, I think because of that, and like, and it's just, it feels like it just moves really quick. Like it feels like the movie lasts like an hour. Like it's just all just nonstop. And I think because of that and the aspect of him going to the 50s and hearing all the 50s music and all that sort of thing, I went way Back to the Future, 10-9.
Well, I'm going to surprise you. And I did the same for Back to the Future.
Really?
But weirdly, for completely opposite reasons. I think that Ghostbusters is really simple, and Back to the Future's got a bit more of a layer to it. I mean, they're both classic 80s movies. It's point A, point B, how do we get there kind of thing. There's nothing overly It's not Christopher Nolan's Back to the Future, which I would watch, but
yeah, I would.
Or Christopher Nolan's Ghostbusters, I would 100% watch.
Yeah, that'd be incredible.
He'd actually make real ghosts somehow.
Yeah, he would.
But I love Ghostbusters, I really do. But it really is just like there's ghosts, we're Ghostbusters, here's the end kind of thing. And that's what to me anyway. And part of the fun of the Ghostbusters film isn't the story, it's just the moments. So it's the quotes, it's the Bill Murray being Bill Murray, it's the special effects. It's not really the story. I don't love it for the story. That just kind of takes us from one piece to another. Like, you know, when Gozer comes to tape off Marshmallow Man, that's not really part of part of the story. It just leads to another fantastic humorous moment. But Back to the Future story, it's just great. Like I said, it's got that great premise of would me and my dad get on? How would I feel if I found out my dad was a peeping Tom? And all that kind of stuff. But and the reason I gave it, because everything in the Back to the Future movie feels like it's for the purpose of the story, not for the joke, or not for the special effect, or not for the the moment. It is for the story. Like I said, the opening, he kicks the skateboard, it hits the plutonium, and that's story without telling you story, obviously. But like you glimpse at one building, and 40 minutes later you're seeing it again, and it's completely changed, and it has a massive effect on it does have a massive effect on the story. So yeah, I went Back to the Future because I've seen it a couple of times, and even at the end when like he's hanging and he's trying to get the thing on, I'm like, he's gonna get it. Like, whereas Ghostbusters, it's a comedy, they're all gonna be all right, and so is Back to the Future. It's not nothing too heavy, no pun intended.
Don't say that to Marty.
But yeah, it is quite simple. It is quite streamlined, but there's a lot of layers to it, and I love the way they incorporate, Marty being like panicked and driving off and hitting a tree, and then that having a small moment later on where it's now the Lone Pines Mall, and it actually affects history and stuff like that. And the only thing I don't really like about the Back to the Future story is the moral of the story is like, just fucking change it, it's fine. We could be better. Not live with, not learn to love what you've got and stuff like that. So yeah, we can be better. Just fucking change it, whatever.
Yeah, it's weird, the whole.
I'm rich now. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, because when you actually like think about it properly for a minute, it's got to be bizarre because he's gone back to the future and there's a life that he just didn't have.
Yeah.
Like, everyone else's lives have been different.
There's so much. Like I've got a friend who just, if the time traveling movies isn't right, it completely takes him out of it, and he will criticize a film based on the time travel. I'm a bit more like, I can take myself out of the logic and be like, it's fine. It's fine. I'm sure, like, even if the picture, when the picture comes back when he's playing guitar on the stage, and they're all still in the same clothes, I'm like, well, surely that'd change. Surely they'd be in rich people clothes or whatever. But so Back to the Future story it's just it's a classic, and I think that's the biggest compliment you can give it, is that you just can't beat it, and it can't be repeated as well, because like, if it was made today, it would be 1993, and it would just be technology that's changed. But if it was made today, the film would be about time. It would be about the time travel aspect of it. Whereas the really clever thing about the Back to the Future movie, it's not really about the time travel. It's about being stuck in that time. Like, if it was now, it'd be like, oh, well, I'm going to go back again. I'm going to go forward again. I'm going to go back. And it would be different times. Like all these multiverse movies, it'd be about a different timeline. But whereas this kind of goes, right, we're doing it once and we're committing. And I really enjoy that they do that, which is why I don't like the sequels as much as the first one.
Yeah, and one thing I will say, like we mentioned there about how the future changed for everyone. I want to know what Uncle Joey's doing these days. Did he still go to prison?
Sure.
That's what I want to know.
Why
Did
not?
he go to prison? Because that kid had a rough time of it.
Yeah, probably, but like not for whatever he did before, but probably some like cocaine, like having cocaine or something, like proper 80s rich person prison sentence. Well, they're bringing it up. Like, I love how everything's the same. The town's still a shithole. There's still graffiti everywhere, but just Marty's family's rich and successful.
Yeah, they're just betting themselves. And
and Biff's all of a sudden got like Quasimodo disease.
But yeah, like you said there, though, like you can rewatch it and just notice different things each time. Like even sometimes now when I watch it, I notice things I've never noticed before. Like I was rewatching it obviously this weekend, and I noticed with the leaflet with the clock tower on that he shows the doc when they're talking about the lightning storm, Jennifer's number's not on the back anymore.
Oh, is that?
Because she writes it on the back, and then when he goes to show the doc later, it's gone. And I don't know if that was just a mistake or because she'd have been the first person to not, like, the first thing to happen to him was she wouldn't have been with him. So that's why they erased it. Like, I mean, they can get away with making mistakes in it because of stuff like that. But if it was done on purpose, it's quite a subtle change. But yeah, like I said, I only noticed that for the first time this weekend, which is crazy. But yeah, we'll move on then quickly to the best villain. I'll let you go first here. Obviously, you've got Biff, who's like
the bully. Any
sort of bully that I'm sure many people have come across in their lives at some point. And then you've obviously got these crazy ass ghosts like Zool and Gozer in Ghostbusters. So I'll let you go first on your rating.
Well, obviously, Ghostbusters has got loads of iconic. You've got Slimer, you've got the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, you've got the dogs, Zool in their form, and then all of the zombie cab driver and the ones that come out of the sewers and all that kind of stuff. But they're all great monsters, but the villain is kind of I when you put villain, I saw it as Zool because that is the overarching villain. And I was like, well, they come in at the end. They're not that great. They do a big backflip and then summon something else. So I shockingly went Back to the Future because you just fucking hate Biff, don't you? Like, he's such a fucking prick.
Yeah.
Like, he's very good at what he's supposed to do because the moment you see him, like when he's an adult, you just know this is the kind of guy I cannot stand. And then you go back in time, another Huey Lewis and the News song. You go back in time, and he's just even fucking worse. Like, obviously, there's the attempted rape scene, which was just a casual family film in the 80s. But like the attempted rape scene, and you hate him there, you hate him in the school cafeteria. But you have that pure satisfaction when he gets knocked into the truck and all the manure goes all over him, and any kind of moment that, like when he gets punched or whatever, it's just satisfying. Whereas Ghostbusters, it's fun. It's like part of the moments, it's part of the humor, but it's not as I don't think it's as satisfying because you've got that build up throughout the entire film with Back to the Future. Whereas you're just hearing the names all, and then they just turn up and then they're gone almost immediately. It's almost like they serve the other jokes or the other moments. So that's why I went Biff, because let's be honest, he's so hateable. Like, he wouldn't get hired.
No, definitely not. But I agree, actually. I went 10-9 in Biff's favour as well. But mostly because I think in Ghostbusters side, I think it hurts them how many like monsters and villains there are. You could even say that William Atherton's character is a villain. Like,
yeah, and he is great, but he's just every other 80s pencil pusher that was against the heroes. And I didn't kind of, he's just another moment for me. But he's a fantastic character.
Yeah, he's brilliant. But yeah, I think because with Biff, he feels, obviously it's a film about time travel, but he feels real. Like, everyone's come across a Biff at some point. Everyone can relate to a Biff being around and just being a pain in the ass. And like you said, that satisfaction at the end when after all the terrorizing is done, even in the future we see him terrorizing, 30 years later he's still the same guy. So when we finally see George just knock his fucking head off, like, that is such a satisfying moment. Like, it's so good. Like you said, he's not even just a bully, he's essentially a rapist. Like,
100%, he's 100% a rapist.
So he's not just a standard bully. But like, I think because he's given the chance to show a personality as well, whereas the monsters in Ghostbusters don't really get that chance. Other than like a couple of the lines that Sigourney Weaver comes out with when she's possessed. But other than that, I think there's not really much time spent on them. Whereas Biff has quite a bit of like personality to showcase. So I went 10-9 in Biff's favour as well. Which again is crazy because Tom Wilson does a really good job, but like I said, I've never seen him in anything else.
No, I actually struggle to fix with anything else, to be fair. But it's like moments like when is it in the diner? I think it's in the diner where like Martin McFly goes to stand up to him and then he looks up and he's like, oh yeah, because he looks over his shoulder, doesn't he? Because he's built like a brick shit house, and he's like, it's just moments like that where you're like, yeah, it is a great villain.
Yeah, he is. Speaking of Biff, though, this is just random and has nothing to do. But I found out today when I was at Haven,
you were the Biff. You were the bully. Is that what you're gonna
say? No, but my second year at Haven, my first year as an assistant manager in the bar. One of the lads there was doing performing arts, and he's just announced today that he's playing Biff on the West End's Back to the Future the musical start. Like, really? He's just announced it today. So shout out to Jordan Pearson. Yeah, shout out to him. Like, fair play. That's awesome for him.
That's like, pretty great.
So I just thought I'd bring that up then. It felt like the right time. But
well done to him.
Yeah, so next we'll go with the best song. Obviously, both movies are very, very synonymous with one song and one song only.
Yeah.
But obviously, they both got a couple of other decent songs. But they're primarily known for like the main one, which are the ones that kick in right at the beginning. Back to the Future's obviously got The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News, and Ghostbusters has got Ghostbusters by, is it Ray Parks Jr.?
Ray Parker Jr. Yeah.
Ray Parker Jr. And they're just both iconic. Like both songs are so good. And I think with Ghostbusters, it's hard to ever hear that song without thinking of that film now. Like,
Well,
and
it's called Ghostbusters.
That's very true. But I think whereas The Power of Love, I think there's people that like that song that have never even watched Back to the Future. I think that's extended beyond the film now. And I think because of that, I went 10-9 in favor of The Power of Love, because that song is one of my favorite songs ever. Why do you disagree?
Well, yeah, I'm going 10-9 to Ghostbusters, obviously. And I think it's because, like what you say, like obviously I'm judging it because we're ranking the movie, so I'm judging it against the movie rather than. But you're right. No, you're right. Power of Love, people can love. It's one of the best 80s songs. Because 80s songs don't have different genres. It's just 80s songs.
80s song, my favorite genre.
It's my favorite genre of music. But man, Ghostbusters. You hear like even without the start, the real song kind of beginning. Like with the guitar like gently like scraping over the top, and the build up before even the drums come on. You know what it is. Like every Halloween party you've ever been to, you're gonna dance to Ghostbusters at some point. You've got the drums come in. The drums are amazing, and then have you ever seen the Ghostbusters music video as well?
I think I've seen it, like, so not without paying too much attention to it, but I feel like I've seen it at some point.
It's so fucking weird, but it's pretty great. But like you say, you can't listen to Ghostbusters or even the drums or even like a single note of Ghostbusters without thinking this is fucking Ghostbusters, and you immediately know what it is, and it immediately gets into your brain, and once it's in your brain, it don't get out. But Power of Love is a fantastic song too, but I don't always associate it with Back to the Future because I've heard it in other stuff. I do, just because I liked that song before. Maybe that's the difference. I liked that song before I saw Back to the Future. But rewatching back, I was like, oh, so they're just going to use this one song over and over again. And then Back in Time comes on at the end, and I love that too. But yeah, Ghostbusters is a great song. Also, you might want to change the score after this, Cal. You know me better than most people who are going to be listening to this, but you can't mix Power of Love, Huey Lewis and the News with Gangnam Style, but you can do it quite easily with a Ghostbusters song, as you well know.
That's not. I think that's why I got PTSD with that song. That's why I could never retire.
You're gonna just wipe that score away from it. All right, fair enough. But yeah, that's why I went Ghostbusters. I mean, it's great. They're both great songs. That's another one where I was like, oh, fuck, this is a fucking hard decision, but it's Ghostbusters, man. You can't not.
The thing is, as well, like, I think both songs were written for the films. Like, we need to do that more these days. We need more songs specifically for movies. Like,
it's because Will Smith. They're not casting Will Smith as a lead anymore. We need We need Wild Wild West again. We need Men in Black.
Yeah, we need it all.
No, they don't anymore, do they?
Like you even think like the Goonies had Cyndi Lauper in it, and it was just incredible. Like, give me more films. Even The Breakfast Club with Don't You Forget About Me. Like, why can't films do that anymore?
Yeah,
that's what we need.
I think the probably. I mean, there's definitely been more, but the one I can most recently think of, if you're not counting Peaches for Mario, is like when Deadpool 2 got Mariah Carey to do the ballad. Oh, I can't remember what it's fucking called, but like, just more of that. Like, where's Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer by Will Smith at the end?
Yeah, that's what we need. Or just like
Will Smith and DJ Jazzy Jeff singing an Oppenheimer song.
Although, speaking of songs, I heard the clip earlier of Ryan Gosling's song in Barbie. Have you heard it?
I don't want it. I'm going in blind.
It is a good song. I've already
got my outfit ready for Barbie. I'm bringing the Kennedy. I'm ready.
It's a good song. I tell you, if you do want to do this again,
100%.
We need an episode on Barbie and Oppenheimer. Has to happen.
Deal.
That's
the Monday after it's released. Deal.
Yeah. To be fair, that felt like the one that was like the catalyst on this idea. So I feel like it has to be done because everyone's going to compare them anyway. Like the whole Barbenheimer thing is really taken off. So
yeah,
I mean, that has to happen.
go a bit fun week.
Anyway, enough of the sidetrack. So yeah, I went 10-9 Power of Love. You went 10-9 Ghostbusters. Next, and probably one of the toughest for me is the best quotes. Which movie has the best quotes? Because while I think on the surface I thought there was way, way, way more for Back to the Future, I was actually surprised rewatching Ghostbusters just how many quotable lines there were. So this was actually much tougher than I expected. So I'll let you go first.
I had the same thing where I went into watching Back to the Future thinking this has got loads of quotes, but it actually didn't. Like there's quite a few, like it's heavy and all that kind of stuff, and obviously the best one is at the end with where we're going, we don't need roads and all that kind of stuff. There was some great lines in it, like I said earlier, like when he sees his dad up in the tree and he's like, he's a peeping Tom, and I think, but it's not like a classic line. There is quite a lot of him, like, but it's not the quotes, it's the performance. Like at 1.21 gigawatts, and he's like grabbing his hair and he's like bloody basically passing out around the garage. But it's, like I say, it's not the quotes, it's really it's the performance of how they do it. Like Michael J. Fox's voice as Marty McFly like really sells a lot of it, because he's a proper whiny teenager. Like he's proper whiny, and he sells it. Like I don't know how Eric Stoltz would have done it, but he proper sells them. Same with Doc. Like Doc does it all the time. But yeah, I mean Ghostbusters. I made it, like I'm not a person that, you know me, I don't take notes. I wing a lot of stuff, but I had to take notes for the best ones because there's just fucking so many. Like, you know, back off, man, I'm a scientist right at the beginning. The whole bit at the end when he's explaining to the mayor, like cats and dogs living together, like mass hysteria. Like don't cross the streams, that's a big Twinkie. My absolute favorite. Oh, you got like the "Are you the key master? I'm the gatekeeper" and all that kind of stuff. And like "We're ready to believe you" in the advert, but which is very synonymous with Ghostbusters. But my absolute, it's a very small one, and I have used it a fair few times whenever it pops up. But my favourite one is in the mayor's office again, and it's when the mayor's asking the Ghostbusters what's happened, and
I think I know which one you mean. I wrote this one down specifically because it made me laugh out loud.
And Ray's like, it was going like something like it was going well until Dick was here, turn off the power grid, and the mayor's like, "Is this true?" And Peter Venkman says, "It is true. This man has no dick."
Yeah, because I wrote that one down because I forgot it after the first time I watched it. So when I rewatched it, and because it is like really funny because obviously he says that like everything was going fine until Dickless turned off the grid, and then Walter Peck's like, "Oh, they caused an explosion," and then the mayor's like, "Is this true?" And you think. Like you just think they're going to try to defend themselves, and then when Bill Murray's like, "Yeah, it's true, he has no dick," like that shit, it actually made me laugh out loud. But
I think maybe the mayor's office brings the best ones because it's when Ernie Hudson character is like, when Winston's like, "I've seen shit that'll turn you white." I'm like, fucking hell, what a classic line.
Yeah, he had another great one when he first goes for the job and Janine's like, "Do you believe in like UFOs and like astral projections and mental telepathy and stuff?" And he says, "If there's like a steady paycheck in it, I believe anything you say." Like the guy just wants to earn some money, like he's ready for it, and I love that. There are some really funny lines. So yeah, it was that a 10-9 for Ghostbusters? Did you say?
Yeah, 100%.
So I actually scored this a tie. I actually went 10-10 because I couldn't separate because half of the ones that Bill Murray alone comes out with are just absolute gold. Like what is it when Sigourney Weaver's trying to like flirt with him, and like when she's been taken over and she's like, "I want you inside me," and he's like, "Oh no, it sounds like you got 2 or 3 people in there already."
Yeah.
But when like he's like she's tried it on with him and he's like, "Oh, I make it a rule to never get involved with possessed people." And then when she starts kissing her, he's like, "Oh, it's actually more of a guideline than a rule." Like his lines just about being horny as hell are incredible.
It's not always is the words that he says. It's that bit when she comes out of the music hall with a friend, and camera just cuts and he's doing that little kicking walk across the thing. It's not even a line, but I'm classing that as a quote. It's just fucking brilliant. He's just everything that comes out of his mouth is pure gold. Got him to where he's going to be.
Rocks. That's all I was to say. Bill Murray just fucking rocks.
Well, yeah, that is very, very true.
But I think my favorite line, which is really off like tracking, like, it's not one you really pay much attention to, but it's when they first go to the apartment and she says, like, when she's telling him what's happened, she says, that's the bedroom, but nothing ever happened in there. And he's like, what a crime. Like, Bill Murray just killed me in it. So that's why I had it tied, because before going in, there's so many Back to the Future ones that are just synonymous with it now. And like, I've spent, I feel like, the last 13 years of my life just quoting that film with my best friend Simo. Like, the line when he's like, Doc, are you telling me you build a time machine out of a DeLorean? And when Doc's like, oh, the way I see it, if you're going to build a time machine, why not do it with some style? Stuff like that. And like, when when the Doc first uses time machine and he sends Einstein a minute forwards, and Marty's like, where the hell are they? And Doc's like, the appropriate question is, when the hell are they? And it's like, at that point, like, oh shit, here we go. But I've got a special shout out because there's one, obviously Biff says, make like a tree and get out of here.
Yeah,
and apparently Tom Wilson ad-libbed that line. He came up with it on the spot. And that
I
line is,
love that I went to do the quote then and said the actual quote when all of my life, even before seeing Back to the Future, I've said, let's make like a tree and get out of here.
Yeah, that's it. Like, it's so iconic. And then obviously it calls back in the second one when the older version tells him off for it.
Yeah.
He's like, it's leave, you idiot. But there's some really good ones. Obviously there's the one when they're first about to use the time machine and Doc says to Marty, he's like, oh, if my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles an hour, you're going to see some serious shit. It's like, even just hearing the Doc swear, I was like, oh, fuck, here we are.
Yeah, and there's the one that's become a meme of, you guys aren't ready for it yet, but your kids are going to love it.
Yeah, that one's probably one of the most iconic with the roads where we're going, we don't need roads. But obviously, just the phrase "Great Scott."
Yeah, well, yeah.
Never heard that anywhere else, ever. And I'll give one last final shout out because I've got this tied at 10-10. But when he first asked Marty who the president is in the 1980s, and he says Ronald Reagan. He's like, Ronald Reagan, the actor. Who's the vice president? Jerry Lewis? I loved it so much. But yeah, I really love that film and those quotes. But I think the Back to the Future ones for me feel more iconic, but the Ghostbusters ones are just really, really, really funny. So it was too hard to separate them. So I actually went tied, which feels a bit cheap, to be honest. But I couldn't in good conscience go one way or the other. So next, this one was a bit random, but it's because obviously both films center on a very specific machine.
Yeah.
Obviously, Back to the Future is all about the DeLorean. That's how they get back in time. Whereas Ghostbusters, the final face of it's all about is it the proton pack? Is that what it was called?
Pack, yeah.
And so both films have these very, very specific scientific equipment that just don't exist. And are very like synonymous with the film. So I thought it'd be cool to just like go through them and see which ones we think are better.
Yeah.
Originally, the time machine in Back to the Future was supposed to be a fridge. So thank God they changed it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. The plan was a fridge, and Einstein was supposed to be a chimpanzee, but they changed it. And I think if you don't change it to a car, I don't think Back to the Future is Back to the Future.
No,
I think
that's part of the charm of it.
Yeah, the shot of him, it's the driving. It's even at the end. What's he gonna do? Just pull up outside his house in a fucking fridge? Like, what the hell? Doesn't make sense. So I think changing that was synonymous with the film, and I think because of that and the DeLorean, how iconic it is, I had to go 10-9 in favor of Back to the Future, because while the proton pack is obviously really important to the story, I think you could change that to any sort of device that could do something similar and it wouldn't matter. Whereas Back to the Future, like I said, it almost was something else and it wouldn't have been the same movie. It had to be a car. I mean, it could have been any car, but DeLorean.
I think the fact that it was a failure, like, sure DeLorean was failing at the time. It was like basically going under. That's why they got it so cheap.
Yeah, there was a cool story. I think it was once the film came out, the owner of the DeLorean brand wrote a letter to Steven Spielberg thanking him because the stock and like interest just went sky high on them.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's a car that no one ever drives a DeLorean. If it was like a Ford or a Ferrari, it's a bit different, but it's a DeLorean that's now known for nothing else but that film. So I went 10-9 in favor of the DeLorean just for how iconic it was.
It was tough because I had a proton pack as a kid. Like, it was a little plastic, just a blue plastic one you put on, you stuck a bit of foam in, you twizzled it, and that foam just went around. Like, that proton pack is absolutely beautiful. But I couldn't, in good conscience, not give it to the DeLorean. Like, I'm going 10-9 to Back to the Future. I was tempted to message you being like, I don't think it's fair to put the Proton Pack against the DeLorean. Let's do the Ecto 1 car versus the DeLorean. But even then, I was like, it's still got to go to the fucking DeLorean, hasn't it? Like, it's just an iconic car. Like, the look of it, with all the stuff attached to it, when it's going back in time, all the lightning bolts are going past it. Which, by the way, I know we've got a visual. In fact, I'll wait till we get to visual effects, but it just looks so fucking good. And you can't argue it. And at the end, like I remember watching it, and I didn't know this. Watching it at the end, I didn't know the ending to Back to the Future. I didn't know where we're going. We don't need no roads. When I watched it in my mid-20s, but at the end, when it's like the wheels just turn up and then just starts flying, like, oh, it's so fucking cool. Yeah. So you can't I can't in good conscience, even with my love of Ghostbusters, give it to anything other than the DeLorean because it's such an iconic car.
Yeah, and it's like when I went to watch Back to the Future the musical last year, they obviously have the DeLorean on stage, and for the most part, it's like quite cool, like the way they have it driving around the stage to get to 88 miles an hour. But at the end, with that final scene, it actually like somehow I don't know how they do it. I couldn't see strings or anything, but it floats and it comes out towards the audience and it turns in the air like this. That's and it was cool. Like, I don't know what the hell's happening there. I don't know how they're doing it, but I'm almost in tears.
That's cool. But, yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, if you think of like films in cars, you've got like you got Knight Rider and the 18 Van, like they're TV shows, so I'm already failing at this. But in terms of iconic, like if Herbie. You were to list iconic cars you are
Herbie Fully Loaded.
Yeah, Herbie, and like it goes Herbie, Lightning McQueen, the Back to the Future DeLorean, and you cannot.
Don't let Martha hear you say that. You just ranked the DeLorean over Owen Wilson. I don't know if Martha's going to appreciate that.
I'm sure she'll be fine. But yeah, I mean, in terms of films, cars in film, there's nothing, absolutely nothing better than the DeLorean. And yeah, you can't argue. Yeah, I don't think anybody can argue against that.
I'm actually surprised that you didn't mention this because it's like for me, it's the DeLorean and the Batmobile.
Oh yeah, shit, yeah, the Batmobile, pretty fucking
Well, there's been too many different iterations,
though, isn't it? Like,
I think the thing with the Batmobile is there's been too many different versions, so it's like they don't feel like the same car.
And everybody's got like their opinions on Batman. Everybody's got the wrong opinion because they should all be picking Ben Affleck. So I agree with you on that one. What's your Simo? If you're listening, mate, you were wrong. Ben Affleck's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a terrible take from him. So yeah, we both went 10-9 for the DeLorean.
Yeah, we did.
Cool. So I think we just got 2 categories left. So next, you just alluded to it then, but we'll go get straight to it, which is like the special/visual effects. Yeah. I'll let you go first on this one, but this one again, I really and ahh'd about because at one point I was thinking it was one way, and then next I was switching over to the other. And even now, I'm not quite sure which way I want to give it.
You're just gonna wait until I finish talking, and you're just gonna go where you go.
I might see if you can sway me.
I mean, Ghostbusters. It's you got the go. There's only, like I said to you earlier, there's a very few moments in that film that don't still hold up. Like the ghost, the librarian at the beginning, like when they come out of the sewer, Slimer looks amazing. Like there's a bit in it when you first meet Slimer and he's flying away from him and he takes the trolley with him. And then the trolley hits the wall as he hits the wall. And as he hits the wall, he just kind of disperses. And there's slime there already. Like, and I know enough about movies to kind of know how that happens. But I'm still like, how the fuck did they do that? And like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man being a guy in a suit, like on a fake stage, and like all that's built up. That's just a guy in a suit. It's not a puppet or anything until the end when his face does that amazing like and all that kind of stuff. But like the special effects and what I was going to say with the DeLorean, and it happens in Ghostbusters as well, is what I really miss from modern movies and why 80s movies have such a fucking charm to them is that hand-drawn special effects. So like hand-drawn lightning, hand-drawn like particle effects. So like when Slimer hits the wall, it looks almost like a cartoon, like smoke coming out. It's just got such a charm to it. But Back to the Future, so there's only one kind of moment that ever sticks out to me with Ghostbusters that's like that's special effects, and that's when the dogs are running. And
I thought the exact same thing when I rewatched it. The dogs running was the only bit I thought looked terrible.
It just looks like somebody's put it on top and just kind of done that, maybe with like a stick or something. Whereas Back to the Future, that happens a lot. I love Back to the Future. I love the special effects in it. But when the car goes and they stood over the flames, you can clearly see it's like they're not there. And the bit, it really, really made me laugh. But the bit in when he's disappearing, and he goes to look at his hand, he looks at his hand normally, and then it cuts, and he goes like that, and it's like you can clearly see that it's not really there. And I get like it's probably budget and all that kind of stuff, but I do love when the DeLorean goes back in time or forward in time, whenever in time, and you've got the sparks, that hand-drawn sparks. It looks beautiful. But I mean, Ghostbusters is very effects heavy, so it's already got it's got an edge on Back to the Future. But you've got the costumes, you've got the look of the dogs, you've got the special effect, the ghosts, the hand-drawn stuff, even Zool's like design, and like having the big bad monster at the end be just like this soft, smiley marshmallow man, and the design of it, it's just fantastic. And yeah, I just don't think you can do much better than Ghostbusters, especially for that time. And I just think it's a classic. I do, like I say, special effects in Back to the Future, they always look like special. That always takes me out of it, the special effects, except when the car's traveling in time. Whereas Ghostbusters, I just forget until the dog runs. I always just forget. But yeah, so I went 10-9 to Ghostbusters, obviously.
So Ari, this is one I really under.
Use your gut. Go with your gut, Cal.
No,
do the right thing.
I will. I mean, I'm not going to show it because I've written down, but I do have it 10-9 in favor of Ghostbusters. Because like there's obviously in Back to the Future there is the stuff with the DeLorean, like you said, with the lightning and stuff, which looks really good. But aside from that, the only really good stuff is the way they age the characters up in the in the 80s. I think the way they age them up, it's I don't know how it's really effective and it doesn't look like fake. I don't get it. Like sometimes I see it and then when they actually go back and I see young Lorraine, I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like I just assume she's more like mid-30s as an actress. And then when I actually see the character, I'm like, oh my God, like it gets me every single time. Like I think the makeup they use is really, really good. Like even Biff, like he looks like you can tell it's the same guy, but it almost looks nothing like him. Like it's bizarre. And it's really, really good. And obviously in the second one, they do a good job with makeup again because they fooled a lot of people into thinking Crispin Glover was in the film and he wasn't even in it. It was someone else. But I went Ghostbusters because I think, like you said then, the special effects and the visual effects, it's just it's much more elaborate. It's not as simple as putting makeup on someone. Like some of the way the ghosts look, like the Slimer and stuff like that, like they look really good for the time. And the Marshmallow Man at the end is... Like that could be in a film now and it wouldn't look dated, I don't think. Like I think that has aged really well. And like I said, the only bit that really stood out to me as bad was the bit with the dogs on the roof. Like when I saw that again yesterday, because I was like, this is actually like all age wonderfully. And I saw that and I was like, okay, maybe not all of it.
Yeah.
Like that
like Jurassic. It's like terrible. Jurassic Park. You can watch Jurassic Park and be like, this hasn't aged at all. But then I can't remember the shot, but there's one shot in Jurassic Park where you're just like, ugh, and then it's just back to normal again. It's fantastic. But there's little bits in Ghostbusters where like Slimer's drinking the wine and it's just pouring. You can see it go through and it's pouring through him, and it's just like that's I know what that special effect is. Like it's such a simple one, but just really effectively done. And the beginning when the librarian goes from librarian to monster, and it's done so seamlessly, and the puppet of it is great. I've got a behind the scenes book, and all the puppets are fantastic. But definitely Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I agree. There's no, I mean, it was hard to decide, but I think when you look at what they did in Ghostbusters and like the things they had to do to create those sorts of visuals, it doesn't quite compare because Back to the Future felt much more simplistic. Like it was, apart from the DeLorean, and then like, it was just the aging factor that I think really stood out well.
The aging is really good though. I remember being like blown away that it was the same actors. Like how did they do that?
I think the only one
the mummy's the one that does it. They do it best too because she looks haggard at the beginning, and then when you see her for the first time, you're like,
they do a great job with her. I mean, they didn't have to do much for Christopher Lloyd because I think that guy's looked 65 for the last 45 years. Like, I don't understand. He looks the same now.
Did they make him look older in the present? Or they did. Because I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, I'm sure he's got prosthetics on, but I can't tell because he just looks old regardless, no matter what age he is.
That's the thing. Like you watch him in the modern, like the 80s, and you think that's the version you remember, but then you go back, it's like, oh wait, no, he actually looks younger. Like he's quite wild, but like even now, I think he looks exactly the same. Like if you did Back to the Future now, you obviously can't use Michael J. Fox, but you could probably get away with using Christopher.
You could probably get away with it. Yeah, he was in the recent like series The Mandalorian, and he's just the same guy. Like obviously a little bit older, like you can tell in his voice a bit, but it's just Doc. It's just Doc Brown, man. Like and he will always be like he will always be Doc as well.
Yeah, I think the thing with him is he didn't even want to take the role at first, but I'm like, it's so good he did because and now he loves it. Like I think he really celebrates the fact he did it, and you can't ever imagine anyone else playing Doc Brown at this point, which is why I gave him best cast. Just that I'd like to remind you.
All right.
But now we're on the final category, which is it feels like it's a good one to end with, which is obviously like the legacy of the franchises. In terms of like sequels.
Well, a good one would be to end with, Cal, would be the conclusion because we've not done that one either.
Did we not?
No.
We just missed it out.
Well, we can end on the conclusion. That's all right.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. End on the conclusion. How did I do? I forgot we missed that. We'll go legacy and then we'll go conclusion. Then, as if we missed close that. I didn't even miss that. I've been literally going through my list. I must have just accidentally skipped it on my way down.
It's fine.
Does that
not mean I get final thoughts?
So we'll go legacy first. I think it's me up now.
It is.
So with the Ghostbusters, what's hard for me is I don't particularly like any of the sequels apart from Afterlife.
Yeah.
Like the second one and then the reboot, I couldn't take to. Where I think Afterlife is genuinely a really, really good movie and I really enjoyed. Whereas Back to the Future, I actually really like all three films. And I think the third one is criminally underrated. I think the second one felt quite samey to the first. So I think mixing it up with the third and taking it to the West was a really good twist. And ending the second one kind of leading into the third where Marty gets stuck in the past and then that man arrives with a letter for him, says, oh, I was told you'd be here.
Yeah.
And it's like a letter from the doc in 1885. Like it was such a good way to end the film. So I think the way they tied all three of those films together for me, and then you include like the ride they used to have at Universal. They obviously had like the TV shows and stuff like that. And for me, it doesn't compare. I went 10-9 in favour of Back to the Future. So it wasn't too one-sided. Not as one-sided as it possibly could have been because I really didn't like the two middle Ghostbusters films. But Afterlife, I think, is incredible.
Afterlife is incredible.
And I know they're doing a sequel to that. I'm really looking forward to that. So I couldn't be too negative on it because that film surprised me. I didn't expect to like that film half as much as I did. So yeah, it was a little closer than it might have been without Afterlife. But I went 10-9 in favour of Back to the Future.
I am going to be a bit of a son of a bitch here, and I give it a 10-10.
Ah, did you?
Yeah, and it's hard because Back to the Future is one of those perfect trilogies in my eyes. You've got there's a few perfect trilogies, and Back to the Future is 100% one of them. Like all of those films are fantastic. Like the second one does feel samey, but I think that comes from the fact that it retreads the same story. Like it literally goes back to the first film and goes over those moments again, which it does. And then I think the third one's criminally underrated as well. And people always kind of go, "Oh, not the third one," but yeah, the third one is fantastic. It's one of those few trilogies like Indiana Jones and Star Wars, and for me, Pirates of the Caribbean is a perfect trilogy because we don't talk about those other two. And it's one of them, and we've talked about it before. You can't remake Back to the Future, and if you do, it won't work at all. It's just a perfect movie.
It reminds me. Did you see the little thing online after Endgame? And I think people were like editing Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. Back to the Future, like we should do this. And I was like, no, we shouldn't.
And that's the problem. That's what it'd be now. It'd be let's get two big stars because it's a big film. Let's get two big stars and let's try doing it. But then they change too much of it. And while I'm gonna shit on my own argument a little bit, that's kind of why. I mean, I like Ghostbusters Answer the Call with Melissa McCarthy and Kate McKinnon. I like that more than most people. but it's not a Ghostbusters movie because they changed too much of it. They changed the soul of what the Ghostbusters is. So, but like I said to you earlier, Ghostbusters 2, I probably watched that more as a kid than I did Ghostbusters 1. And I've got so much love for that movie. And Ghostbusters Afterlife is such a heartbreaking movie in such a positive way that I couldn't not. That, and I started thinking about legacy. And I know you said, the films, but I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here. But like Back to the Future's got the cartoon, it's got video games, it's got comics, it's got the stage show, which is obviously like a huge legacy, and everybody loves Back to the Future. You've got the DeLorean, you've got people dressing up. Like when it got to the year that was on the picture, like everybody was like, "This is when come on guys, we've got to start dressing up like this next year." And everybody knows Back to the Future. And similarly, I couldn't not give it to Ghostbusters for that same reason. You've got like Extreme Ghostbusters, you've got the video games, you've got the comics, you've got all that kind of stuff. And also with Ghostbusters, you've got, same as DeLoreans, like people buy DeLoreans to make them look like the movies, to then like take them to charity events and stuff like that. Like, and Ghostbusters, like we had some at work where people dress up as Ghostbusters and go to like conventions and do a lot of stuff for charity. And I don't think you can argue either of I think Back to the Future wins for me more on legacy of the films because they're all perfect. And Ghostbusters won on the legacy of what it means to people. So I fought myself so hard on this one, and I nearly gave it to Back to the Future because she said it was about the films. But then I thought, fuck you, I'm scoring it. I can do whatever I want. So I was like, you can't argue the legacy of what Ghostbusters brings, because you see somebody in that jumpsuit, it just brings you joy. Like I got to wear. It was like, do you want to wear mine? I was like, yeah. And like I thought, it's going to be dead light, blah blah blah. I put it on, and like nearly fell over. So, and it just brings that. It's just that pure joy of it, isn't it? Like everybody wanted to be a Ghostbuster, everybody wanted a DeLorean. I don't think you can argue the legacy of either of them. You think of 80s movies, and if you don't think of those two almost immediately, there's something wrong with it. Do you know what I mean? They're just fantastic. So I went 10-10 because I couldn't. Carl just couldn't.
He's not even in the middle of a mental breakdown trying to explain that.
I genuinely was like, this is what I was saying to you. I put on Back to the Future. I thought, fuck, this is going to be harder than I thought. And then when it came to the talking about the legacy thing, I was like, I genuinely can't decide. And you've always got that, like, you've got the bias of loving Back to the Future as a kid, and I've got the bias of loving Ghostbusters as a kid. But like, you can't argue either of them. Like, if you wanted to be Marty McFly as a kid, if I was a kid and watched that,
still do.
Yeah. I think in your heart you are, mate.
Yeah.
I want a pink Mattel hoverboard and like self-tying shoes, but I also want a Proton Pack and a Ecto 1. So yeah, you can't argue the legacy of either of them.
Yeah, and it's also, when you think about how much money they both made and how successful they were, like, how often these days do you just see like an original story be made into a film and just make money like that? I don't feel like there is. We get like comic books and video game adaptations or sequels, legacy sequels. There's nothing nowadays that just comes out and just like captures that sort of zeitgeist and just takes off. Like, you don't get it now. It's sad. Because those two films are like Raiders of the Lost Ark in the 80s, like and the Goonies. It's like films that are based on nothing. There's no source material. They're just incredible. We need more of that.
Agreed. No, I've got no argument there. Agreed. Like, even Ghostbusters Afterlife, like, is successful because it's pulling on the heartstrings, but it works enough on its own as a sequel without going too much. I think the only egregious moment is they just turn up out of nowhere at the end. That's the only egregious like crime that does. But even then, it's like it's doing it right. It's doing it with love. It's not doing it to make it. That movie wasn't made to make money. That movie was made because director Jason Reitman loved Ghostbusters. His dad directed it, so he obviously grew up with it, and he loved that movie. He loved that franchise, and that's why you can't do Back to the Future now. I don't think, because people love it, but it's done. It's perfect. You don't need to, and if you do, you're going to end up Matrix 4 in it and ruining my dreams.
Yeah. Just a quick one before we go on to the last category. Then,
yes.
Had you watched Back to the Future before they got to 2015?
Yeah.
So you'd watched it before we reached the date that he went.
Yeah, I must have done. So I must have been early 20s. Yeah. Oh, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I remember when I'd been, because it was my actual first year working on a holiday park, and I just moved out. I was 19, if that makes you feel older.
Cheers, mate.
And I'd worked 3 consecutive weeks that day. I think I was like 21 days in a row, and my first day off was that day. So I sat in my caravan on this holiday park with I think it was like a 12-pack of Budweiser, and I just watched the trilogy alone, and it was probably the most content I've ever been in my entire life.
I believe you.
It was a hell of an experience. But yeah, we'll move on then to the close, which apparently I just decided to skip over earlier.
But it worked out well in the end.
Yeah, it is the best place to do it. I mean, it would have been better if we opened with the opening, but we didn't. We went with Cash to start off.
Who needs the opening?
But yeah, talking about the close, you've obviously got in Ghostbusters. I think it's quite an abrupt ending actually, because it's once everything's finished, they vanquish the monsters and stuff. It kind of just they celebrate for like what 30 seconds and it's over.
Celebrate with the credits, don't they? Really?
Yeah. So in the credits, it shows them all celebrating, and then like there's obviously the bits where it shows each person long enough for them to have the name. Like that is as 80s as you can get. Whereas in Back to the Future, obviously the ending is Marty thinking it's everything's great now. He goes to see Jennifer and they're about to leave, and then all of a sudden Doc shows up, and it ends on a cliffhanger where it's like, "Oh, we need to go to the future. Your kids, like, they're essentially in a bit of shit."
Which is kind of brave in the 80s, really, to like, because back then sequels. I mean, I wasn't alive for that kind of time, but back then,
I thought you were about 15 when Back to the Future came out, weren't
you? Back then, like sequels weren't that great. Like, yeah, obviously Empire and stuff, but the sequels weren't the money makers. So to end on a cliffhanger, I mean, it still works on its own. You could just kind of be like, oh, and they're going to go off on adventures. But it's quite brave to be like, right, okay.
Yeah, and apparently they didn't. When they did it, they didn't have plans to make a sequel. I don't know how true that can be, but it did take 4 years as well. Like the end like that, and then Back to the Future Part 2 doesn't come for another 4 years, so it is a hell of a cliffhanger to wait on. Yeah. But I think the ending, it's just as exciting as the rest of the movie. Like you said, it's instead of having like the quiet, like you think you're getting the nice ending where he sees his family and everyone's doing better apart from Uncle Joey, who's apparently still rotting behind bars. But like, and then you see Jennifer and they have the nice living. But then like that should be where it ends. Then all of a sudden the doc's saying it's like, no, we need to go. And then that's when he gives the icon. Well, first he puts the banana peel and stuff into the DeLorean for fuel.
Oh yeah, because he's changed it to a Mr. Fusion.
Yeah, and then it's the line where with the roads where we're going, we don't need roads, and
which is one of the best ending lines.
And it ages perfectly because Back to the Future 2, 4 years later, just opens up with that scene.
Yeah. Did they I've not rewatched Back to the Future 2. Like we only did the first one. Did they redo that? They redo the first scene again, don't they? But like modern with like updated, like aged again. Yeah,
because obviously the actress that played Jennifer didn't come back. They got Elizabeth Shue from The Karate Kid instead.
Yeah.
So they had to redo it with her, which it took me about the first 8-9 times of watching before I realized they'd even changed the actress, because I was like, at 10 years old, I didn't even know. But yeah, I think because of how exciting that ending is, and it plays into a sequel as opposed to Ghostbusters, which one I think felt quite abrupt for me. Like it felt like they finished the fight and it was just done. So because of that, I think I went 10-9 in favor of Back to the Future, just taking into account like the way it played into the eventual sequel and how it's the iconic line ending it out, like, and just seeing the DeLorean fly, like you said, the first time, I can't remember the first time I watched it, so I don't know how I was feeling, but I imagine for people watching it now who don't know, just seeing it fly at the end must be like mind blowing. So yeah, I went 10-9 in favor of Back to the Future.
Like I said, I never knew about the ending, about the car flying when I first watched it. Like, so it was mind blowing. It was like, what the fuck? And obviously it's like, well, it don't look great compared to today's standards, even way back then, but in black and white times. But it still blew your mind. And can we before I give you my can we just make sure that Ghostbusters is winning before I give you my final score? Because I am going to give it because I am going to give it to Back to the Future, because you're right, like it just kind of ends. Like again, it's moments, funny moments, this here, there, and then it just ends. And you have like Ernie Hudson, like I love this town, and then the Ghostbusters music plays, and then it's ended, and then the actual ending, like I say, is over the credits, and it's like, okay, I want to know what happens. And then you have Slimer fly into the camera, and then that's it. And by the time Ghostbusters 2 comes around, everything bloody changed, and you don't really get to know what happened between then and then. Whereas Back to the Future, even from like, I would say the ending is from when he arrives back in regular time, and it's like he goes, and at first the town, like I say, the town is still shady looking. So like, as oh, he's back, it's just normal. And then he goes, and everything's better, and everything's, his parents obviously a bit richer. His brother's now wearing a suit rather than a pizza boy outfit. His sister's batting off boys rather than being like a nerdy loser.
Yeah, isn't he seems like Greg or Craig coach? So which was it, Greg or Craig?
Yeah. And then and then like the reveal of he finally gets his Land Rover, and then Doc turns up, and all that happens. It just feels more complete of an ending. And like I say, even if there wasn't a second film, I would be happy with and they go on more adventures. So I think, yeah, definitely Back to the Future's got the better ending, 100%. Also, having Doc turn up in those clothes, and you're like, what the fuck are those clothes? Like even by today's standards, like, it's not going to look like, but it's just cool. I like when he's like got the sunglasses, and I think it's Jennifer, or it might be Molly. You should know better than me, but she's like looking through them, and they're like looking as if, can you actually see through those kind of things? And you clearly can't. But I remember when it was getting closer to that time, there was a website. I can't remember which one, but they were selling the glasses and the tie as like a bundle, and they were like selling out really quickly because people were wearing them to celebrate the times lining up. But yeah, no, the ending to it's complete. It's great. The ending to Ghostbusters is great, but it just ends. Whereas Back to the Future it fully closes off the story in a really nice, satisfying way, and making you want more, which is always what you want. Successful movie, I guess. Make them leave them wanting more.
That's it. So yeah, that brings it to an end. So we'll quickly add up these scores then, and then we'll reveal the winners. Right, well, there's the scores added up, and I can reveal.
Hold on, 1 second. Winner. 1 second before you. I think we can both agree. Whoever's the winner, we're all winners for having these movies in our lives. But
that's very true.
It should be Ghostbusters.
Do you know what I was thinking? Like, it's hard to do like these sorts of things where both people have very clear films, because if you just did it on what we both scored, it'd just be a tie.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly most weeks, I imagine.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought, I didn't know whether to add our scores together would be fairer, but then it's hard to gauge like how the best way to score it is, because some weeks one of us might be a bit more biased towards one film, and that might end up meaning the other loses, or I don't know, but it's hard to
I think it really just I think, add up your Ghostbusters versus my Ghostbusters, like add them all up to a total, because at the end of the day, like that's what we're doing, and
yeah,
it's not like we're saying one movie, like they're both great movies. Like we're never going to do it.
Neither's winning an award over what we decide right now, so
well, you never know. This could be the start of a very successful podcast.
So I thought you were going to quote Casablanca then. Is it the start of a beautiful friendship?
It could be the start of a beautiful friendship, but I would never assume that you would call me a friend.
No, you're right there, yeah. Not around anyone else, especially not for people to see online when there's proof.
Oh no, you don't need physical evidence. But no, it's like if I do join you, which I hope we do, because I've really enjoyed today, but it's not like we're ever going to go, this is a shit movie, we're going to pit it up against a great movie. It's just great movies, isn't it? Like I say, I'm just happy that we've both got Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, because just imagine life about Back to the Future and Ghostbusters, man.
I mean, if Back to the Future didn't exist, I'd have been much more miserable in that storm on Saturday night. And every time I'm ill, I don't know what I'd have watched. Every time I'm ill, I can't sleep, I just stick Back to the Future on. There was a moment a few years ago when, through grinding my teeth, I got like an infection in my gum. And like my mouth ended up looking like Quagmire. It was ridiculous. And I couldn't sleep for days. And I watched the entire Back to the Future trilogy at 5 a.m. Like
do most of your stories end with, so I watched the entire Back to the Future trilogy?
more than I'd care to admit.
We watched the film. We watched the film the other week, didn't we? And it was like, I can't believe I'm watching this shit instead of the Back to the Future. It's the fucking release of the anniversary.
It was the 58th anniversary. We watched Princess Bride. It's outrageous. I felt like a missed opportunity. Which, on a closing note, can you believe that's 30 years? So in 2 years, it'll be 10 years forward from where they went, and we still don't have those little hoverboards.
No, we just
or
have
self-tying shoes.
No, we just have those wheelie board things.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Horrendous. What a time. We got vape pens instead of cool shit.
Yeah, which a lot of people might benefit from, but certainly not me. Anyway, enough sidetracking. We'll get to the score. So
I'm just trying to distract you so you don't piss me off.
So in first place with 193 to 188 is. Can you hear that?
No.
I tried to drum roll on the desk. It's Back to the Future.
Oh, fuck you! No,
it's Back to the Future.
You skewing it. No, well deserved. Well deserved.
I think because there were a couple that were much closer than. So, like, the score doesn't reflect how close it is.
Like my score was 96 to Ghostbusters and 95 to bloody.
Yeah, so yours was much closer than mine was. Yeah. I think in this case, I might have been a bit too into Back to the Future because it is my favourite movie of all time.
You say that after an hour and 20 minutes worth of recording. Cheers, Cal. Let's start. Should we start from the beginning, shall we?
There were some categories though that were like, it was really difficult, and it's like Back to the Future edged it, but just because a couple added up, it made it look more dominant than it ended up being. But yeah, like you said, both movies are just incredible, and I love both a lot. So it was the two of the best movies to possibly do for your first episode. But yeah, that was really fun. So yeah, Back to the Future wins. There we go. Wait, no, there we go.
I'm fucking livid, but I'm okay with it.
To celebrate.
I'm okay with it, but I'm livid. You're gonna watch it now? Watch it now to celebrate.
Yeah, I might. Yeah, but thanks guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. And if no one wants to see Nathan's face again, just let me know, and I'll make sure he's never on this show again.
What did I say to you the other day about me coming up podcast? It'd be the best looking podcast with me and you on it.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But yeah, thanks guys for listening. I hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon with another episode with movies that we haven't quite decided yet. So I'll let you know when that's decided. Peace out.
Cheers.